All right. So I think this is a really exciting session. This is going to be an exciting conversation because Clarissa and I have been working on this project around these new modules for PUTL for at least 2 years now. So this is kind of the launch point of these new modules to the university and to you that are here joining us today. And it's also a chance for us to talk about professional development as educators on campus, which I think is a really important thing for us to have that conversation around, and how the CTL can support your growth as an educator. So you'll hear the acronym PUTL as we talk about this today. And so what is this? So PUTL is our professional development in university teaching and learning online modules. And it's a series of online modules that have a goal of engaging you in reflecting on your own teaching practices and your own experiences on campus as an educator. The modules themselves are online, they're self-paced, you can do them in any order that you want to, and they're really inquiry-driven in that our goal from the center's perspective was to give you opportunities to not only reflect upon what you've already done, but to work towards something tangible that's kind of a lasting piece of that reflection. And I think that you'll notice that a lot of the deliverables that we'll talk about in these different modules are pieces that you can go on and use in different ways. So whether that be parts of a teaching dossier, whether that be pieces of a reflection that might be helpful for when you're looking for academic positions, PUTL was really kind of this culminating piece of a bit of recognition also for the work that you're doing on campus in a teaching capacity. So the modules really do require you to have a bit of teaching experience, although I think as we talk about what the different modules are, the levels of teaching experience do differ. So there are some modules that are a bit more introductory and are a bit of a foundation and a growth into your role as an educator. Whereas some of the other modules will require a bit more depth and thinking about how does your teaching, how is it impacted when you start to do scholarship and research on teaching and learning within your discipline? And how do you start to take leadership opportunities within the educational sphere at Queen's or beyond? And then one of the things that I think is really helpful and to discuss is, why would we take on extra professional development as educators? And sometimes what a really important piece is being able to get that recognition of the professional development that you do on campus. So for each of the online modules, there are deliverables that you submit into our group of EDAs, and you get an acknowledgement of completion when you've kind of satisfied all the requirements of the deliverable. So nice little things to put in your CV or as you're preparing a teaching dossier. So that's kind of the foundation of what PUTL is and these modules, and we'll go into a bit more detail about them individually.
So on this slide, we have like a snapshot about the modules and the modules that are available for you to complete. So something that's important to note is that you do not have to go in order. You can select which ones that you feel like you can engage in first, depending on what your experiences are or what you are needing feedback on first. And for this, in a minute, we're going to talk about how we've created 2 new modules over the last couple of years. But in the structure that we have right now, you need to complete 5 modules in order to get that certificate of recognition of your completion of PUTL. And so the 7 modules we have are: first, the foundations of teaching and learning; 2 is practical experience; 3 is educational leadership; 4 is scholarship of teaching and learning; 5 is accessible teaching and learning; and then the 2 new ones that we're going to go into a little bit deeper today is indigenizing and decolonizing teaching and learning and anti-racist learning environments. So something to talk about, like something that we want to go over in terms of the general structure of all of these modules, is that the way that we introduce sort of the concepts in them is that we have learning objectives. So something all the modules have in common are learning objectives about the topics at hand. And then we introduce some key topics, and then we go into something that we describe as self-directed learning tasks. And so as Carolyn mentioned, these are optional professional development modules. And so there is no synchronous class, there's no instructor. This is an opportunity for you to sort of engage in questions about teaching and learning and do it in a kind of exploratory way. And so some of these self-directed learning tasks include things like research on your own. So for Module 4, Scholarship of Teaching and Learning, it involves you identifying something that you're interested in relation to teaching and learning and doing some research yourself and starting to engage in what research is out there in terms of higher education. And so that's one example of a self-directed learning task. And then, you know, for example, for modules 1 and 2, the self-directed learning task is more so looking at your own experiences, your own thoughts and ideas as an educator, and starting to put together those thoughts and articulate them, which includes like actually going out there and having some practical experience as an educator. And then there are also pieces about like developing teaching resources and teaching tools. And so, for example, Module 5 involves taking something like that you've developed, like a teaching assessment or a teaching tool or something in the classroom, like a learning activity, and then adapting it according to what it means to make those accessible. And we introduce concepts like universal design for learning in that module, and we allow you to do some learning around that and then apply that learning into something you've already developed or you've seen or experienced as a student yourself. And so that's the general structure of PUTL. And so when we say that it's, you know, self-directed, that's what we mean. We introduce you to some concepts and we introduce you to some learning objectives. And then really it's about you tapping into what you're interested in doing and what would help grow your learning. And so now we're going to get a little bit into the 2 new modules. And so previously it was just modules 1 to 5 that was part of our modules for a very long time. And then over the last 2 years, especially in response to desires and needs and institutional accountability, we've responded with our own sort of development of modules related to indigenizing and decolonizing teaching and learning, and then the 7th one, which is anti-racist learning environments. And along with developing these 2 modules, we tried something new. And you're going to notice that these 2 modules, for now, look a little different from the previous 5 modules in a way to engage in that exploratory kind of learning in maybe in a different way that allows you to sort of have even more autonomy in what your learning looks like. So going into a little bit of the structure. So let's first talk about some of the things that are the same. So for these 2 modules, something that is the same as the previous 5 modules is that they're grounded in learning objectives. And I won't read out the screen here, but these are the learning objectives for Module 6 and Module 7. And this is sort of like, this is what you're going to learn. In engaging in this process, these are the sort of takeaways that we are wanting you to learn about. And between these 2 modules, they're kind of structured in the same way in terms of learning objectives. The first learning objective for both modules is about building your foundational knowledge. So building foundational knowledge in terms of indigenizing and decolonizing teaching practices, and building foundational knowledge in terms of anti-racist learning environments. So that's something consistent between the 2. And then the second objective for both modules is applying that knowledge to your teaching practice. And you do that in a couple of different ways. You have choices in how you want to do that, but it's the same kind of idea of building knowledge and then finding application. So that's something that is the same as the previous 5 modules. And so what's different is on our next slide. And this is just the example from Module 6. Module 7 has obviously different sort of details. But what we've tried or what we've developed is a streaming kind of process for engaging in these learning objectives. And the purposes of doing the two-stream kind of process is for you to be able to choose how you engage in those learning objectives and engage with how you want to apply your knowledge to different aspects of teaching and learning, and really giving you the opportunity to say, wow, this is what I want to get out of this module. And so for each module, both streams have the same learning objectives, but they have two separate sets of learning outcomes and two separate sets of deliverables. And so, for example, in module 6, you'll see that the stream 1 learning outcomes are, as a result engaging in this module, you will be able to develop your foundational knowledge about indigenous and decolonizing pedagogies, and brainstorm specific and detailed ways that land acknowledgements can be incorporated into different components of a course. So stream 1 of module 6 is really about thinking about land acknowledgements as a pedagogical sort of process, as a pedagogical tool. And then the deliverables reflect that. And then for stream 2, the learning outcomes are identifying how colonial structures exist in past and present, in your past and present teaching and learning experiences, and then using the pedagogy piece, which is developed by one of the developers at the CTL, Lindsay Brandt, and disrupting colonial teaching practices using that model. And so while the first stream is really focused on a specific pedagogy approach, which is land acknowledgements, the second one is more about thinking about how you can apply some knowledge into your own teaching practices and different options in which you can do that using a very specific module. And so that's what we kind of mean by the streaming process. Both streams will accomplish the same learning objectives, but it's really up to you to choose how you want to do that. And so it really taps into this idea of like self-directed learning, but with some structure, and to really expand how you can accomplish a professional development. So, Carolyn, did you want to add anything else to that before we move on?
No, I think this is a really exciting part for me of thinking about PUTL in this new streaming section, in that, offering professional development for you as an educator means that we also want you to get out of the modules what is, the best professional development for you. And I think that that's what this streaming hopefully tries to accomplish, is giving you an option for you to pick a path that suits your professional development needs, as well as kind of like our outcomes that we're hoping that you walk away with at the end of the modules.
And I think the reason why we really wanted to try a new structure is to sort of tap into the idea that professional development is ongoing and really expansive, and has to involve a lot of commitment and engagement on you, which means that you have to find things that are meaningful for you as starting points. And so we're trying to tap into that sort of curiosity and that excitement that you may hold, and guide you towards what you may want to explore and what you may want to do.
So I think one thing that maybe we can pause here to mention, because we've talked about time and time commitment, but around that, professional development isn't just a checkbox, it's an ongoing piece. When working on PUTL online modules, there is no specific timeline of completion. So we've talked about that you can do them in whatever order suits your experiences and your needs, but there also is no defined, you register and you have to do a module in a month. These are open to you once you register for your full length of time as a graduate student or a postdoctoral fellow. So it might be that you can do some of the modules earlier in your grad studies when you have a particular level of teaching experience, and then maybe some of them end up waiting until you gain a little bit more experience. Maybe you've had a teaching fellowship and then you want to come back to work on some of the modules that you didn't do the first time around. So there is no time constraint of when you have to do the modules in what particular order. You have access to them for as much time as you need while you are a student or postdoc at Queen's.
And I think also to that point, something else to mention is that, we've really emphasized how this is self-directed and you have lots of autonomy and it's very like you're on your own timeline, but that doesn't mean you're completely on your own. The purpose of PUTL isn't that you just pass or you fail and that you never get the chance to sort of really develop. You are able to work with EDAs to really polish your submissions until you're where we are all feeling that you're at a place where you've accomplished or those learning objectives and learning outcomes where you feel confident in what you have learned and what you have delivered in relation to these modules. And so, it's never about, I'm on my own, I either do it right or I do it wrong. That's not the case at all. It's more so like, we want you to be engaged. So we want you to be self-directed, but at the same time, we're here as support to help you along the way if you have questions or if there are places where you need a little bit more support. And so, it's there are different ways of connecting to the CTL team, even though you are doing this at your own pace and you're making a lot of the decisions yourself. So that's another important thing to note.
So the next part we wanted to talk about too is that these are self-directed in the sense that you can go in and take a look at them before you start working on them as well. All of the PUTL modules are housed within OnQ, and they're in a course that you can self-enroll. So you don't even have to reach out and ask someone to be added to this particular course. The easiest way to go about doing it is to head to the CTL's website. Under our programming for grad students and postdoctoral fellows, you'll see a link for PUTL modules. And then on this page there, I've kind of put it in a nice red box, is a button to self-enroll in PUTL. And once you click this, you'll be brought into OnQ and you'll get a big list of all of the possible self-enrolled courses at the university. And so you'll scroll down until you can find the PUTL modules here. It'll say PUTL Professional Development in University Teaching and Learning. It'll be blue on your screen, not black like mine, because I'm already enrolled. But if you're not enrolled, you'll be able to click right on that title of that course and it will automatically enroll you in our OnQ space. Once you're in our OnQ space, then you can go about exploring. So we have a course that's not committed to any particular semester or any particular year at the institution. So when you log into your own OnQ, you might not see it right away, and that's because we fall in this all courses category. So the easiest way to find our course is to, in your OnQ, select kind of the all courses under that initial drop down on the left-hand side. I've put a little arrow here, and you'll see PUTL has this wonderful kind of multicolor banner. That's where you'll find us, and that course kind of lives in your OnQ space until you are no longer a student or postdoc at Queen's. And so you can continue to access it, explore it. You'll see any changes and updates we do over the years if you're in this course for more than a few years. And what you'll see as a student on this side is you'll come in and everything that we have is currently under the content tab, and you'll see it's all separated based on the module that you want to engage in. So all of our modules are numbered. You can just go into the module that you're interested in, and it will have the information about those self-directed learning activities that Clarissa was talking about. It will also have pretty clear explanations of like, what are the deliverables for each of the modules, and then how do you submit them? Everything is submitted right in OnQ, and then an EDA will reach out with some feedback right through OnQ. So it's all kind of housed in the same spot. Once you've submitted all your deliverables and an EDA has been in touch about meeting all of the learning requirements, you'll get a little OnQ badge for each of the modules that you complete. And the little badge will give you a certificate of completion for each of the individual modules. So everything happens in this nice kind of tidy place within OnQ, which is also really handy to keep track of your progression through all of the PUTL modules. So at this point, I think that's the end of our kind of official and formal information piece. Clarissa, do you have anything to add before we jump into some question and answers?
So the last thing I'll add for the recording is that the people who will be giving you feedback and, assessing, when I use that term really broadly because it's not like an assignment, it's really just like a process. are graduate students. They're also like me, they're education development associates. And so it's really, we come at it in a really collaborative way, that we offer you questions to push your thinking. It's not about, you being graded or assessed. It's more of a conversation. And so it gets at the idea that professional development is also done relationally and communally. And even though that these are online, the people on the other end very much care about your development as an educator, and also our development as an educator, because we always learn through different submissions. And so that's something also that we would like for you to keep in mind, that this is very much meant to be like a really empowering kind of experience, and to get you really excited about becoming an educator and continuing to grow as an educator. And so that's the only thing I would want to add.